Hello, it's Rohini again, and today it's day 9 of my video series covering the 7 C's to success. Apologies, I'm trying to adjust my camera so you can't see the mess in the background. Let me just adjust it so you can't see the mess in the background. So today's video is going to be talking about the 4th of my 7 C's, which is competence. And if you missed my previous 4 videos, which really gave you an introduction to the 7 C's, and then I've talked about the 3 previous C's, which are curiosity. No, I beg your pardon. The first one is clarity, curiosity, and creativity. And this is the 4th of those C's. Now, I want to just talk about competence and think about what it actually means. I fear that in today's age where people can go and get a qualification for a certain area of competence, competence has become synonymous with having qualifications or having the academic label that you are competent. But if we think back on a time when you didn't have that sort of label, you didn't have formal qualifications, we still had people who were extremely competent and who achieved amazing things and who went about changing our world with the things they did. So I fear that our obsession with qualifications and having letters against our names and a sort of almost validation has become a slightly negative thing, because we are now overlooking things that we are capable of, that we do every day without even thinking, that really can help others and change our lives and that of others around us. So here's what I want to say. So competence, clearly something that we, from a young age, we go to school, we get told what to study. We don't really have a huge amount of choice, and then we probably go into higher education, and if you are a professional, chances are you went further and you did some professional qualifications as well. And then you kind of feel that, having spent all of this time and possibly lots of money as well, that you now deserve to be rewarded for those qualifications. Sorry, excuse me, I've got something in my eye. And there's this almost sense of expectation, even I dare I say entitlement, that I have these amazing qualifications and therefore I should be paid a minimum of XYZ. And it really troubles me that in some companies or some organizations that actually people are chosen purely on the back of what they have achieved academically, without too much consideration to what they are genuinely capable of on the ground. And the consequence of that is that people who are genuinely capable and would probably make better employees don't get a look in because they don't have the qualifications. And this can exacerbate this sense of unfairness and inequality that is already pretty much all pervasive in our society. People who don't have as much money may not get these fancy qualifications, and therefore they feel shut out of the job market in certain areas. So what's the answer to that? Now obviously I don't have a sort of a sweeping answer to that, but I would say there's a couple of things that I want to think about. That if you as an individual want to show up in the world and show them what you are truly made of, what makes you unique, then you need to really look within yourself and think, what am I genuinely capable of? Not just what academic qualifications I have, but what else have I done in my lifetime that I know would be of value to somebody else. So you may have a number of skills that would never go on your CV. They would be things that you do without even thinking in your everyday life, maybe on the home front or maybe even within the community. And these are things you almost take for granted. I want to share with you something interesting. I have these conversations with my clients where I tease out, their skills and competencies. And the first reaction generally is to kind of think, okay, so what do I do in my job? And, what are the things I would put in my CV? And that's all very good. I mean, it's a good starting point. But from there, what I help them to do is think about what is it that makes you a go-to person to your colleagues, when you're in the workplace, in your kind of average week or average day, what are the things people come to you for? What are the things that your friends and family look up to you for, or would seek your advice, or, turn to you in their hour of need? And that's a very interesting sort of add-on to looking at what things you put on your CV, because then they suddenly discover things about themselves that they realize is not something everyone else has, that what they have is actually unique to them. And it gives them a sort of broader perspective on what their skills are, what they are truly capable of. It also gives them a sense of what more is possible for them, because say you got yourself a qualification, from a highly acclaimed academic institution. It's not the end of your learning, is it? I mean, it's just the beginning, and let's face it, it will probably help you to open doors in your specific industry. But once you're through that door, you have to go in there knowing that the things you learned are just a starting point, that you have so much more to learn. And I think this exercise of thinking, what am I really good at? What are things that I could learn that would make what I've already learned even more powerful? And that's where this kind of C for competence is so powerful, because then once you have become clear on what it is that you are, capable of, what you're meant to do, what makes you unique, then you can actually really focus your attention, your intention, and your energies towards the areas where you want to grow your knowledge base, you want to grow your experience, and you want to become more skilled. And in doing so, you evolve as a person. You probably become more confident, because you are now, not just kind of competent in name, because you've got a qualification that some academic institution gave you, but you know that you have grown in your competence and you have learned new things. So that's kind of where I want to leave it. And I would say that the final thing I want to say is that competence and skills, often are synonymous with somebody who works, or is actually being paid for the work they do. And there's an almost quite offensive underlying assumption that if you're someone who doesn't go to work and get paid for it, that you have no skills or competence. And I think that's so wrong. So someone who is a caregiver, or someone who is a housewife or a house husband, who is at home, chances are they're doing a lot of work. They're doing a huge amount of work that they're not being paid for, and they're probably keeping the household running, so much so that people who live in it don't even notice. They kind of just take it for granted. Those are valuable skills. Those are not things that are useless outside of your home. So I think if you're someone who is who's not been working for a while, maybe you took a career break and you're thinking, well, I don't really know what I'm capable of, I don't have any skills, or my qualifications are too outdated, I would say it's never too late to revisit the things that you once loved, the things that you were good at, and the things that you have the ability to refresh, relearn, and go into the world and make a difference with. So that's kind of my parting message. It's all a little bit serious today, isn't it? But I think I want to end with a little story of my own kind of experience of qualification and why, in some ways, I'm a little bit cynical, perhaps unfairly so. So I actually did an MBA from one of the top business schools in India way back in 91. And when I graduated, I like all my classmates, I really thought that I was highly employable, that any company would see my value and snap me up. And of course, when I came to England, I still had this optimism that I could walk into pretty much any job I chose, not realizing, of course, that your qualifications, your competencies, everything that you stand for, change in their perception and value depending on the ecosystem you're in. So when I was in India, there was a certain perception of what my qualifications were worth. When I came to England, they were not worth very much at all. In fact, I came into a time when there was a very deep recession in the UK, and even top class British graduates were finding it hard to get the job they wanted. So of course, little old me, coming from India with my Indian qualifications, really didn't stand a chance. And it was a really, in some ways, looking back, it was a very timely and humbling lesson that actually qualifications mean nothing out of context. In the real world, they mean very little. And so I actually started my real education working as a temp. And I would say that I learned almost everything I know today in the years in which I was temping. I was earning as little as £3 an hour. But, now that I'm that much older, and I think, since I made my breakthrough and finally got the career I wanted, I look back at that time and I realized that I was actually being paid to learn. In some ways I was kind of an apprentice of my own choosing. And the things I learned in those years have proved more valuable to me than any qualification. And I'm really ashamed to tell you that I don't really remember very much at all of what I studied when I did my maths and statistics degree, equally when I did my MBA. It's almost like my brain has somewhere decided that those things were not useful, they were not getting me the job I wanted, and therefore there was no point storing that in my conscious mind. I'm sure it's there somewhere inside me in my subconscious mind, but if you ask me what did you learn, I'm probably going to struggle to tell you what I learned. So that is a sad confession from me, that my qualifications from India did not serve me well, at least not initially. And so I'm a huge believer that learning happens every single day. Every time you go out, you talk to somebody, you learn something new. And competence is something that we can continue to grow through our entire lifetime. And it's a wonderful feeling, because when we learn, we grow. And when we grow, we learn. So it's a nice sort of, virtuous spiral of learning. So with that, I'm going to leave you and have an amazing weekend. It's Friday, thank goodness. I hope you've had a good week. I will be back again tomorrow because I'm still on my 30-day challenge. I've missed one day so far, but pretty much on track for the rest. And I appreciate this has been a bit longer than my usual videos, but hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to coming back with my next one tomorrow. Bye bye.